delighted to say that Tom Slater is with me, editor of Spiked Online. Very, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. I mean, I do want to hear from people on lots of different topics, and I want to hear your thoughts on both of these big topics, particularly about what Nigel Farage is going to say today as, top of the polls right now, but also, obviously, still these ongoing events, developments in Liverpool. Obviously, we have got an arrest, so we have to understand, that although no charges have been brought, we don't know if they will. We understand that the person arrested was the driver of the vehicle that ploughed into numerous people. 47 people injured, amazingly, extraordinarily, thank goodness no one has died. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on Nigel Farage's promises about winter fuel allowance, tax breaks, married couples, any of the two-child benefit cap to win over voters, but also your reaction to the information the police chose to give out yesterday about the suspect. We can talk in more sort of general terms in terms of police information to us in the event of attacks that people not unreasonably might think early on were terrorist attacks, and who could be behind them or what the motivation could be. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1 standard network rate message. Tom Slater, to you first on what happened in Liverpool. 47 people hurt, 4 children included, taken to hospital, 27 total taken to hospital, 20 treated at the scene. 4 people, including a child, were trapped under the vehicle when it was finally stopped. Absolutely horrific. We know there's been incredible heroism from ordinary Liverpool fans who were at the victory parade for the Premier League title, who rushed in to try and lift the car, to rescue people trying to, push children out of the way. I mean, there was a pram left at the scene. A baby was among those that was hit by the car. Lots of, ordinary men and women just doing the right thing, the way that most people do. We also know, the police, medical staff rushing in, fire brigade doing what they can to try and save people's lives. A man has been arrested. What did you make of the fact that the police announced very, very quickly that it was a 53-year-old white British man from the Liverpool area who was arrested at the scene, and the contrast with the trickling out very slowly of information after the Southport attacks? And indeed, I was looking at tweets that the Merseyside Police have released just in the last month about arrests made and even charges made, none of which mention the colour of anyone's skin. What did you make of it?
No, it's striking, isn't it? I mean, obviously, first and foremost, what a horrendous tragedy for a city and a football club which have had a fair share of tragedies over the course of their history. It is absolutely incredible that at least so far no one has actually succumbed to their injuries, and also incredible, frankly, that driver managed to get out there alive, given the response that engendered from a furious crowd.
I think the understandable response.
Absolutely. It's absolute horror show, but the discussion naturally turns to how the police are dealing with it, the way in which they've trickled out this information.
Could it have been prevented?
No, absolutely. There is a marked contrast, I think that's fair to say, between how quickly they got out the information in relation to this suspect in contrast to what happened in Southport. There was the complicating factor in Southport, of course, of the murderer's age, which led, I think, to an extra level of caginess.
He was 17. He was a few weeks from his 18th birthday, and a judge did actually later allow him to be named before his 18th birthday on the basis that by the time he went to court he would be named as an 18-year-old. But I wouldn't expect to be given a suspect's name on the day or before charging. I think that's absolutely fair. But the fact that the police chose to say the word white, now a 53-year-old British man or just a 53-year-old man from the Liverpool area would have been reasonable. Now, I did court reporting. I know, I'm a real journalist. I used to sit in court, I know what I'm allowed and not allowed to report from a court proceeding, or what I'm allowed to report when someone's arrested or someone's charged. And a lot of it has changed in recent years. There's been a lot of more grey areas than there used to be, partly because of online speculation. We know after Southport there was a lot of speculation about that it was, completely made up nonsense, by dodgy accounts on far right, and genuine for it. That it was an asylum seeker, a migrant, that and then the police put out, no, this was it was someone born in Cardiff, and then of course there was that picture we later saw of him at the age of 7 or 12 or something as a Welsh choir boy, and of course this did not actually match what people on the scene were saying. And it was, I think it if not an outright lie, a deliberate obfuscation of the truth. They were trying to steer people. And we're told that they had to do that because of, racists and bigots. Apparently, like me, some of the words I've had, just simply say, we can only speculate why the police have given more information today than they would have in normal times. And a lot of people say, because if you don't say it's a white British man, then vile bigots and racists will start rioting. Do you think that's true?
I certainly think that's part of their rationale. I mean, I think they've taken on a really low view of the public in these situations, which is, if you present them with too much information, particularly if it's information that might seem to point in a particular direction, then you're just going to have repeats of the scenes that we saw last summer.
Because we're all naturally racist bigots.
Just ready to go off, basically.
Ready to go off at any moment.
Is how they say, which is why there's this tendency to manage, to drip feed. At the same time, they've now got themselves into a really tricky situation where I think they recognise, and you saw it in the police inspectorate report into the handling of Southport and so on, that they were too slow to present the information, that this led to an information vacuum which was exploited by precisely the kinds of bad actors that you were describing earlier, who, even after what happened in Liverpool last night, and even after the information was presented, were continuing to cast doubt and try and imply that maybe something was being hidden from them there. And the difficulty then
it's reasonable for people to not trust the police and the CPS and information. It is reasonable.
And I guess the difficulty is because there has been that profound lack of trust, which has happened for quite understandable, reasonable reasons, as you say, is that they're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't. If they just say a 53-year-old man from Merseyside, there will still be this kind of clamour of questioning.
But what we would expect is consistency. That's what we expect. But again, remember with Axel Rudikapana, they also, on the day of the attack, which happened in the morning on the 29th of July, and he was eventually charged, I think, on the 31st. Yeah. But he was in custody within minutes of the attack. It wasn't like, we've got a manhunt. They had him in custody. He was seen by plenty of people. It wasn't. Within hours, certainly within a day, they had found ricin, and they had found an Al Qaeda terror manual on his computer. Okay, that wasn't released until way later, until long after he was charged, and he wasn't charged until October. Now, again, no other circumstances would you wait until October to charge him with those crimes after an attack in July. I think people are reasonable. I just find it extraordinary that. So anyone raising the point that the police give different information in different circumstances. The information, for instance, remember Alison Pearson being arrested? They go, we can't tell you whether or not what the crime was. We can't tell you what tweet it was that you wrote, Alison Pearson, when 2 police officers turned up at her door. But then they leaked the body cam footage. The police, the only people who had access to it were the police. The police leaked the body cam footage of the conversation they had on her doorstep to the Guardian. They're very picky and choosy about the information they give out. And the argument always seems to be, yes, but we can't give out full information, or we have to give out full information if it's someone who's white, because otherwise you nasty racist bigots will go around smashing up asylum seekers' hotels or anyone you meet that's black. This is such a damning view that the police, the CPS, the authorities have of the general public.
And it's one of those things where now, in the wake of any attack like this, we end up having a kind of prolonged lecture about why people shouldn't speculate, which I think, first of all, seems to be a distraction from usually the horror which has just taken place itself. Also, the issue after Southport, or even after what happened last night, and the kind of conspiratorial rumour mill that will start to swell, it's not individuals with 3 or 4 followers on X wildly pontificating, although that is still, shall we say, ill-advised at the moment. We don't know all of the facts. It's big accounts, people who should know better, who do know better, who's just pumping this stuff out because it means they get engagement and they get some money, and because of the fact it pushes their agenda. You allow those people much more room to operate when you are cagey, when you don't treat the public seriously, when you create a level of distrust within the public between them and the police because of how they handle cases like this. So surely be as upfront as possible, be as consistent as possible, as you say.
And that's it.
And
that's all I'm asking for.
How you start to rebuild trust. It's really not that simple.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine for the police to say we can't give certain information. I mean, we even had Keir Starmer after Southport saying we couldn't give certain information, it would prejudice the trial. Rubbish. Absolute rubbish. What? Information about what he'd been charged with? Absolute rubbish. And there are other times when we get huge amounts of information beforehand. They pick and choose. And again, bear in mind, this is the same police force, Merseyside Police Force. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Give us a call, 0244 499 1000, and say our hearts go out to everyone in Liverpool dealing with this, because I'm absolutely terrified. I mean, look, there were so many people there at that parade. Everyone will know someone who was there. Everyone will know someone. And we're talking about children and people. I mean, it's amazing to watch some of the footage, and you see there's something to me. It's about the dads who literally like grab the kids and push the wives behind you. There's something just about like good people do the right thing. Most people, they're good people. They do the right thing, and the city coming together once again. Coming together for something that was wonderful and really meaningful as a Liverpool fan, winning the Premier League. Bearing in mind last time round they weren't allowed to celebrate because we had lockdown. But then actually coming together over really important stuff. I know football's important, but it's more people being alive and people actually surviving that. I mean, I don't know what other words. People say the car ploughed in. I mean, there was someone driving the car in. It was an attack. I mean, people felt attacked. People were killed. So people were hurt, but thankfully not killed. Some speculation, by the way, that the driver may have left a bar, may have been drunk. That's some of the speculation that is being reported today. So we'll keep you updated on any developments if the suspect who's currently under arrest is charged or not. We know that there is no terror link and no one else is being sought in relation to that crime. Let's also talk about something completely different. Benefits. Now, we know that Labour have been very, very big on, we're about tackling poverty, we're about, working people. A lot of people feel they are now the party of benefit claimants rather than the party of working people. The scrapping of the winter fuel allowance as a universal allowance has been a massive, massive vote loser for the Labour Party. They had pledged to keep the end the two-child benefit cap when they can afford to. We've got to have a big press conference in 45 minutes from Nigel Farage in London. He's going to say he wants to return the winter fuel allowance to all pensioners, everybody, no matter even the highest earners. He wants to end the two-child benefit cap. He's going to scrap that. He also wants to bring in a marriage tax allowance, tax breaks effectively for married couples, to encourage people to get married, to form family units, but crucially to have more children. I'm asking today which of these policies would people support or not support, and tell us why. 0344 499 1000 is the number to have your say on that. What do you make? The winter fuel allowance, bring it back for everybody?
I think that is clearly the politically sensible point, and I think that's the way to look at these measures, to be perfectly honest, is the fact that there will be arguments, the rights and wrongs of the winter fuel payments, whether or not it should be means tested, whether or not it should be universal. It's quite clearly become kind of political.
It's a massive cut through that policy.
It's something which came up time and again in the local elections, and I think it's therefore politically savvy for them to do this. The two-child benefit cap thing, I think, is in a sense even more interesting, because I think what Farage and Reform are beginning to recognise and beginning to tack towards is that the kind of voters that they're trying to attract, the kind of coalition that they're trying to build, is that kind of underserved portion of British politics who are quite socially conservative but actually relatively left-wing economically. So any policy which kind of signals that they can almost outflank the Labour Party on certain particular issues will play very well with those people. So I think that's really what we're looking at here, is a embrace, even if it's just around the edges, of that more red-blue politics, which has proven so successful.
I mean, I'd say, winter fuel allowance, if you instead of making it a £300 payment and you just put it into the main pension, just added it to the main pension, then higher earning pensioners will get taxed on it, and then you can basically means test it that way. There's a lot to be said for universal payments, simply because it involves less admin.
Yeah, a lot cheaper.
And it's much cheaper. There's most benefits that universal. Same with child benefit for years. It's just cheaper. The people who get it, who don't need it, are already paying enough tax. They've covered it anyway. That's kind of the view. They don't need it, but also it gives people buy-in to the system.
Absolutely,
isn't it? I think it's insane to end the two-child benefit cap. The two-child benefit cap isn't the reason why families who aren't in work are on benefit, are receiving those benefits. The reason why they're in poverty is they don't work. And if you've got, 3 or more children, I suggest you should go out to work. It didn't apply to children who had been born before the policy was brought in. It was 2017 was the point at which any child born after that date. But there are people who'll be going on to benefits now, who single parents and the like. Well, then I'm sorry, Dad's going to have to pay more for you, and Mum is going to have to get a job. By the way, like most mums who are married to the fathers of their children, giving more money, and it's an extra like £3.5k a year out of your and my money to people who are not working because they've had more children, seems to me to be madness.
Well, I suppose there's a couple of different arguments going on here. One of which is that there's a renewed interest, particularly on the right, on the kind of need to encourage various different kind of incentives people to have more and more children.
I don't want to encourage people who don't work to have children. But their children are less likely to work ever.
And the point being that any kind of thing within the system which might in some way kind of disincentivise that is probably one thing that they can patch these things together, along with the marriage tax breaks and so on that you're already talking about. I suppose the other thing, this is why Labour remain committed to it, which is whilst we can understandably look at the people's individual circumstances, bad choices that they're making, should the state be the ultimate guarantor of people making bad choices themselves? Absolutely not. But when you look at it purely through the lens of, will this measure help those children in terms of child poverty, this seems to be quite a
We could give all of those children £1 million and that would help them, but is that the right...
I know, but we could talk about anything like this.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, that's my point. There's no evidence that this will actually make the children any better off. What the children need is their parents to be in work, or their parents to stop having more children.
No,
because one of the reasons why they're poor is because they're not in work, because they keep having more children.
But you don't legislate for a perfect world or for perfect individuals.
No, you don't. But you also don't provide perverse financial incentives for people to make the wrong decisions.
But it's one of those things where...
No, this is this idea that people who are on the lower level of income, whether it's benefits or not, don't make rational decisions. Yes, they do.
Oh, no, of course they do.
You're going to give someone an extra £3.5 grand to have another kid.
But this becomes an argument against any form of welfare state, full stop.
No, it doesn't. No, there's no safety net.
You could take this to a certain level.
No, safety net.
If you're looking at a particular measure, which I think, as I say, in this context has more political significance than it really is even more of a kind of policy argument. On the Labour Party side, they're quite committed to it. They see it as the kind of unfinished business of the Brown government, child poverty and so on. On the reform side, I think it's purely what it symbolises, which is we can outflank Labour to the left on certain policies and cut through it. That's where I think really the debate is. But I don't think Nigel Farage or Richard Tyson or anything, I don't think they actually believe in that policy. Listen, I want to get in one quick topic really quickly. Macron v Macron. What do you make of this extraordinary video of the plane? Brigitte Macron is just slightly off camera, but the door opens to the plane as they arrive in Vietnam. Emmanuel Macron, you see her hand just like sort of smashing into it, well, two hands actually, smashing to his face. He's sort of actually a little bit sort of, off kilter. And then he sees the camera, smiles at the camera and waves, and then they walk down, stony face, separate, down the plane steps. Initially, Élysée Palace claimed, this was AI, it wasn't real. It was real. There are lots of different cameras that caught it. And then they said, oh no, they were just having a laugh. It's like, there was nothing playful about this. This was a woman smashing her husband in the face. Well, anything like this, that's almost, shall we say, a private moment, which otherwise, if it wasn't for the angle of the camera, became public. I don't think it becomes something that's really difficult to say anything about it too definitively. Was it private? They're on a plane full of staff and crew. But again, we then end up kind of treating one little moment of interaction, which we otherwise wouldn't have seen if the camera was otherwise, hence as if it's like the Zapruder film. We're going for it frame by frame. Let's imagine if that camera had caught him doing that to her. But we all know why that's more significant, isn't it? But we do. Because in the other direction, because men are stronger than women. Yeah. Domestic violence and so on. Yeah. It's a slightly different. But nevertheless, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. 0244 499 1000. Going to take a quick break now.